Welcome to Paintabilities. Today we are continuing with a fifth lesson in water. I know last week I said it was my last lesson and I forgot that we have 5 weeks in the month of March. So I got to give you a bonus lesson in water today. So today we're going to be looking at reflecting water. All right. And it's one thing to paint reflecting water where it's a flat mirrored exact replica of what's above the water that is reflecting on the water. But it's something different to create that look with movement in the water, like there's a little bit of a breeze and it's more of an impressionistic looking reflection. So take a look at what I'm going to be painting with today. This is a photograph from a Japanese garden that I found on Pixlr. And this is actually a much larger picture that I've cropped down to fit to the 8x10 canvas that I'm going to be working on today. So this is a beautiful wisteria bush that's draped over and reflecting and leaning into the water. And I'm just real excited to get going on this because it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to be using mostly scruffy brushes and mop brushes today with a little bit of our sponge help too. So let's get overhead and let's get going on this. Here we have our 8x10 canvas, and I'm going to be using a Donna Dewberry one stroke painter's sponge. And so the first thing we want to do with that always is to get that dampened. But before I do, I want to tell you what colors we're working with today. So for my background, I'm going to be working with sap green, citrus green, and thicket. It's a little bit different, darker green. All right. And then we'll have some burnt umber for some of the dark areas underneath the wisteria bush. And then for the bright pink bush that's in behind the wisteria, we've got some magenta. And then finally some violet pansy and wicker white to do the wisteria with. And as I mentioned, we're going to be primarily working with mop brushes and scruffy brushes. So I have the 3 sizes of each that I'm going to be working with today. We have a 1/2 inch, a 3/4 inch, and a 1 inch mop. And then we have a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 inch scruffy. Okay. So we'll be picking those up as we go along. So first we want to get our background in. Let's get our sponge dampened with our fingers in just some water, just enough to get that surface of the sponge damp enough to move the paint around. And then the first thing I'm going to do is start working on the background. So we'll work up here and put our background in, and then I'm going to leave it mostly dark so that we see our pretty light wisteria bush, and then we'll work the water color in together. So first of all, I want some sap green on this sponge. Okay, so quite a bit of sap, and then get a little bit of citrus. Okay, and we're going to come right up here at the top of our canvas, and we're going to make circles. I'm going to lift that up so I don't make my camera move around. So you're just putting in a dark background to start. Okay. So we always need to have a dark to see light situation, especially in landscapes. All right, now back in here, I want this a little bit darker. Let's get some sap green and pick up just a little bit of the burnt umber with it. And we're going to kind of tap this in just to set that upper left corner a little darker than the foreground. Okay. All right, now for our water reflection, we're going to start to bring some of that dark down in here. And we're going to go right up like that. With wrapped canvases, you always want to make sure you get the sides while you have the color on your sponge so that you don't have to try and replicate that color later. All right, now coming forward in here, we've got a little bit different tone. So I want to wipe off that sap green from my sponge, and we're going to come get thicket and some burnt umber and some citrus. All right, and we're creating that tone of green. Okay, water always reflects what is directly above it or around it, And it's not always sky color, so that's what makes it blue. I'm going to add just a touch of white in here because I want it a little bit lighter. So sometimes it's all the trees that surround it, and it gives it more of a green tone. A little more of that white because I want that lighter. There we go. All right, so coming forward down in here. So this is a blend of Thicket, citrus, burnt umber, and white. It gives this kind of mossy light green color. Okay, so that covers our whole canvas and gives us something to work with. Okay, so I'm going to take my sponge and go ahead and fold that up, put it in my water basin, clean that later. Don't forget about it. Okay, so again, working from back to front, we want to put in our dark pine background that I see there. And so we've got that kind of dark sap green back in there. So we're going to work with the Thicket now and some citrus green. And I'm going to be using, I'm going to be using my large Scruffie for that. So 3/4 inch Scruffie. And I need to put out some, oh no, I have Thicket, that's right. So Thicket and sap. So I'm going to go with mostly Thicket. And then come over here and pounce in some sap on the other third of my brush. Okay, so that's what we want to look like on the bottom of our brush. And so right up here, we're going to just pounce, lightly pounce. It's still wet, so it's eating up the color off my brush. So I need to have stronger light color for that to show against that dark background. There we go. All right, so pouncing through. I'm going to get just a little bit of white on that citrus. There we go. I'm going to tip to the side. Can tip to the back to add dark in there, tip to the front to add light. Just trying to create the look of that pine tree in the back. There we go. Okay, now that's not really reflecting because it's so far back, so we don't have to worry about replicating that in our water. But I am going to go ahead now and wipe off. Oops. Okay, I'm going to put that brush in water, and we're going to come to our and we're going to come to our 1/2 inch Scruffie. And this is the foliage that's in the wisteria. Okay, so I want to load with mostly, or with all, citrus green. So a good amount of that. And then we're going to come over here and pounce 1/2 of it into white. So good strong citrus and 1/2 white. Okay, so I've got quite a bit of paint on my brush right now. And so this comes from in the upper right corner. All right, and we're going to come down. And you see how I'm kind of making a random movement with my brush as I'm applying and pouncing that color onto my canvas. So that allows you to leave some gaps where the background color is showing through. And as I'm coming forward in this front edge here, look at the photograph. It's very, very light. So I'm adding more white to that front half of my brush. And you can kind of tip it to get smaller groupings of that color. Come back and get more citrus and then some white. We're going to come right in here. So right now it just looks like a lot of busy foliage, right? Very random movement, so you're not creating a pattern. Rocking and rolling with the brush will help you with that too. So you can rock back on the corner, on the dark, roll forward on the light. Okay. And get those edges. All right, so that's what all the foliage is going to look like. We're going to come back in after we add our purple and do a little more refinement of that, but for the most part, that's what we want. All right, so it comes right down to the water's edge right here. Now, this is where it gets a little important because I want to create that reflection that mirrors that top. But I want to leave it wet and have my mop ready to go. So I'm going to have my 1-inch mop ready to go, all right? Because we're going to flip this upside down, and then I'm going to mirror that angle here, all right? So it's best if you turn it upside down to do that. And then look at your photograph. You don't see all of that. You just see some of it, the top part that's standing out, right? So right about through here. And then it comes across like that. While it's wet, I'm going to take my mop and we're going to streak through it just like that. All right, so you're creating a little bit of that movement on the water. You have to do it quick or it will set up on you, okay? And then that was on a dry mop, so now we have to go put that in water before it dries, which means I can't use that mop again because I need another dry mop to do the purple part, okay? So this is just a quick and easy way to get this look. It's not necessarily meant to be the only way, but it's my way of how I would do it. Okay, so now you can see that kind of reflection up there, right? So we might have a little bit more down here. I see that in the water, right? And then I can take a flat brush. You can do the same thing with a flat brush if you don't have a mop handy. So you're just kind of fanning it out, letting the water move. Okay, now I'm going to wipe off that Scruffy because it's a lot of citrus green in there. And then if you look up underneath where the wisteria is hanging, it's very dark. Okay, so what I want with that now is back to this 1/2-inch Scruffy. I'm going to pick up Thicket and pounce a little bit into the burnt umber. Okay, and so right in here, we want to darken up underneath all of that. That's Thicket, a little bit of burnt umber. I want a little more umber than that. Right along that water's edge. Okay, and you see how I'm kind of pushing it up underneath the light, so you can come at it at an angle and create those little areas of darkness. Right, and then we'll just continue along this water's edge. I'm going to turn my brush sideways so I can control the edge of that water, and then you can kind of tip up into that light and create that shadow. Okay, now because I want to reflect that, and it's already pretty dark in there, I'm just going to kind of tap in some of this brown. Okay, and then I can use a mop brush or a flat brush. I'm just going to use this 12 flat that I have that's dry, and I'm just going to sweep it side to side on the chisel edge. Okay, so looking at that photograph, this is what I'm using for reference. I can come right up underneath here. Let's pounce a little more in here. Okay, and then you can kind of pull that into that light. Okay. And then we have a little more of it out here. Right, and then same thing, you're just going to kind of sweep it into the light. And creating that water movement. Okay, a little bit up here, sweep it, a little bit up here, just what's left on my brush. I'm not putting heavy paint on here because I want to be able to maneuver that into those light areas with the flat. I know I said we were going to work with just Scruffies and Mops today, but this flat's actually doing a better job for me. So best laid plans don't always work out. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Okay, I'll wipe off that flat or clean it. And then we're done with this 1/2 inch Scruffy, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in water too. Okay, now I want to let this kind of set up a little bit, so while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put in that little magenta bush that we see in the back here. So I've got a 1/2 inch Scruffy here. I'm going to load with all magenta, and then I'm going to come and pounce just a little bit. That's a lot of magenta right there. Let's clean that out. Just a little bit into some brown, this burnt umber. So I got magenta and burnt umber. All right, so right up here, I'm going to put that right in. Now I can foresee that I'm going to need some light reflection, so I'm going to need a little bit of white. There's a little bit right over here too. Now if you wanted to reflect that in the water, you could. It's just I don't see it in the picture, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wipe off this brush, and let's get magenta with a little bit of white. And just right up here, just a little. Let's Just going to pink it up a little bit. That way it doesn't look so flat. Okay. Okay, I think that's better. Looks better, more painterly looking than realistic looking, but it's in that dark green. All right, wipe that brush off. Okay. So with this now, I want to add purple. So this is Violet Pansy. And then we'll get half green, or half white, excuse me. So Violet Pansy and white. And we're going to start up here first. So little bits of it. And the white part is to the top. And you can, again, rock and tip your brush so that you are controlling how much and where it goes. Put it right into where these openings are. Okay. Because at the top it's hanging, but it's not visibly hanging like it is in the water in the front. So it's just more hints of it, little pieces. Okay, right in here. This citrus is still a little wet in here, so I have to keep getting fresh purple and white so that it doesn't overpower it, turn it an uglier color. Okay. All right, now as we're coming closer to the water, this is where I want to be more specific with the shape and size. All right, so let's get this out of the glare. There we go. All right, so you can even, like I was showing you before, you turn your brush to the side and you can create more of that kind of winding, or not winding, but curved shape. Hanging over the water. And the water's edge is right here. So it can come across that plane. Okay, I'm going to lighten up a couple of these. All right, so getting a nice little groupings and a little light reflecting on them. I'm getting a little muddy with this smaller Scruffy, so I'm going to wipe that off on paper towel and just reload with my colors. Okay, white. All right, so now what we want to do is recreate that reflecting mirrored look of this, and then I'm going to have my half-inch or 3/4 inch mop ready to go. So what I'm, instead of flipping, I'm going to just go like this so that I'm mirroring these ones that are closest. They touch almost because they're hanging in the water. All right, and then while those are wet, I'm going to come and take this mop and just gently, side to side, swipe those. Okay, then we can come up and do more here. So these above here. And then here's one. Okay, so just do a little bit at a time and sweep before it dries. Just barely touching. So now we're up here. And you can get, the further away they are, the less defined they are because they're just not, it's hard for that light to travel. And so I'm really just kind of putting in some color that represents what that is up there. Okay, so it doesn't have to be perfect match. It doesn't even have to be right in the exact same location. It's just reflection. Okay, and then again before it dries. Okay. And then we'll come down here to finish this up. Okay, and then sweep those straight across. Okay. All right, now to finish up the shrubs up above, right, we need to add some depth into this. All right, I'm pretty much done with the water. There's a few things I want to do to it, but pretty much done. So I'm going to take my 1/2 inch mop now, and I'm going to get Thicket and Citrus. Kind of tap that together. Not together to blend, but tap the brush to load it between the colors. Get a little bit of white on there. I think I need some clean white. So 1/2 inch mop is really good for foliage, but you have to pounce it, kind of tap it onto your plate to break it apart like that. Okay, and so let's come right in here And we're going to tap some dark on top of these. And then let's get some white. More dark, tap forward white. More of the Thicket. Citrus, pounce together, tap white. So up above these, I'm going to tap in the back half of my loaded brush to get that dark, and then above it, right, tap some of that light. Right in here. So this purple is wet and it's picking up on my brush. So you have to kind of wipe off when you get muddy and then come back and get your dark. Or dry that stuff first, but I don't have patience for that. Okay. Let's get a little more of the citrus now. And then some white. Okay, so very impressionistic looking. If you want more control with the wisteria, then you have to go to a flat brush and kind of tap that to break it apart. Right, so like right in here, you can get a little more control over what that looks like. The scruffy brush is nice, but you don't have a ton of control with it. My white. Okay. Because we need to kind of integrate our reflections, because they look like they're sitting on top of each other. All right, so let's put out a little more of the Thicket. All right, so this is pretty dry. I can get most of the moisture out of it. Okay, so let's come to, we want citrus, a little bit of Thicket, right? We're trying to get that green back. So a little bit of white. Oh, I need clean white. A little bit of white. Thicket, citrus, and white, and then there was just a touch of burnt umber in there. Okay, now I'm going to kind of smash this out again. All right, so right in here, we want to come across in between. I think what I want to do is, let's put some floating medium out. So kind of winging this here, guys. All right, so medium. And then smash the brush, like I said. So we have to kind of come over the top of all this wisteria with this water reflection. Even with everything that we put in here, we still need to make this look like water. So medium with those colors, and I'm up on the tip of the brush sweeping. Let's get a little bit of white over here. There. But it's straight across, don't put any curves in it. And that white will tone down when it dries, as it's drying. A little bit of white. So just to kind of create that reflection. You don't want to mute down completely these colors, but you do want them to be less vibrant than the originals up here. Okay, so you just kind of keep working that, create that reflection. And then let's take our 12 flat. Just to finish this out, I'm going to clean 12 flat. I'm going to load this with medium. This is floating medium. And then I'm going to get Thicket and burnt umber side loaded on that 12 flat. We're going to come right along this edge where it's visible underneath the hanging wisteria, so that it looks like it's hanging over, and you're creating that water's edge of the pond. Just kind of pushing that back up a little bit. There, just to kind of set that, and then you can kind of push up from that. Create that shadow under there again. Just with the corner of the brush. Okay. Grab my script liner. Let's get some inky sap green. So I hope you learned something today with how to create reflections in water. You can invert and do a mirrored stroke matching what you have up there, or you can come right below and match that. You can create movement in the water with the mop brushes and the flat brushes. I was just trying something here. I wanted to see if this would get this a little bit darker right in here. On the chisel edge of the brush. So lots of different little techniques you can try to create that reflection of everything around the water, in the water. There, that looks a little better. Okay. Well, there you go. This is the final class on water for this month. I hope you enjoyed that lesson. Thank you. Bye-bye.